You guys, I'm in my, my voice is a little hoarse. I'm trying to get a sip of water here. Hi. Nice to see everybody. Oh, alrighty. Let's do this thing, huh? All right, we're going to talk about the topic today of how to not lose your mind over the pace of weight loss on hCG. Okay, so we've got a lot to cover, but I have my outline over here. So if you see me looking to the side, that's what I'm looking at. Just try to keep this close to my phone. So disclaimer, I'm not a doctor or a medical professional. This is not medical advice. I'm just sharing my experience and what has worked for others. I'm hCG Chica, as most of you know. Razel is my name. And real quick before we get started, I wanted to let you know I'm doing these lives as part of the special launch week of my Phase 2 hCG diets, hCG diet recipes. Sorry, I've been talking too much tonight. But anyway, you can find that at hcgchicarecipes.com. I just released as a membership for a one-time fee 441 Phase 2 recipes, and for only 1.5 more days till like Wednesday morning or something, I am actually including a bonus, which is some Phase 2 meal plans that I made when you purchase before Tuesday night, basically. So you can check that out, hcgchicarecipes.com, okay? So just want to share that. I'll remind you guys one more time at the end. So let's talk about what we're going to cover. Hi, Angel. Nice to see you too. We're going to talk about what to do when you're concerned about your weight loss. We're going to talk about what the normal average amount of weight loss is and why. And then what's important to monitor for best weight loss. Okay? So those are the three main things. This is definitely probably one of the number one emails I get is concern over how much weight they're losing and feeling like it's abnormal and something's wrong with them or the hCG or the diet or something. And so that's why I thought it would be an appropriate thing to talk about, because it's just one of those things, you just worry all the time and you hear what other people's results are and you feel like yours aren't the same. And so anyway, my best tip here to start with is just that this will probably go differently than you expect as far as the diet goes, and to just expect that. So that's just kind of the first thing. But the truth is, it's hard to follow something that's hard, like this diet, if you don't have like a clear point or reason for doing it, right? Like you're not gonna do a 500, 800 calorie diet that has you need a goal. I get that. It's like we need have a meaningful reason that we're doing something, but not being so specific about it that it causes discouragement, because we don't have a certain high level of control over how much weight we lose in a certain amount of days. We just don't have that ability to dictate that to our body, right? So anyway, that's kind of the balance that we want to strike. So the point here with our meaningful goal is weight loss. Like that is super motivating. And, you might have an overall long range goal, like, oh, I want to lose 100 pounds or 75 pounds. That's fine. It's not wrong to be specific about that. Or we'd like to be a size 6 again or whatever. That's fine. When it comes to your actual rounds, though, that's where I encourage you to kind of step back from being too specific and just be like, this is part of my weight loss journey. I'm going to lose weight this round, and it's going to add to my big goal, right? But you don't know how much it's going to be. You just can't dictate that. So that's kind of my best tip there on that. When you are concerned about your weight loss, this is the number one thing I tell everyone to do first. Anyone who emails, this is my first question to them. My first question is, how many pounds have you lost total in how many days? So always figure out your average weight loss so far. Even if you're not worried, figure it out, because it'll keep you feeling okay in general, unless there really is something wrong. So I want to show you an example here. So hopefully you can see this okay. So say it's VLCD 15, it's your 15th day on hCG. That means you've been dieting for 14 days. So whatever your weight is on the scale today, day 15, it's actually how much weight you've lost in 14 days, not 15, okay? Because you've just started your 15th day. So say you lost 10 pounds in that 14 days. If you divide 10 pounds by the 14 days of dieting so far, you'll see that that's actually 0.71 pounds per day average. So you've lost 3/4 of a pound on average per day. Now in reality, you might have lost 2 pounds one day, none another day, 0.3 one day, 0.7 the other day. But if you average it out, that's your average per day. So you should always do that. As soon as you're feeling worried, just figure out your average. And more often than not, you'll realize that your results are normal. Which leads me to what results are normal. So let's talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about the science behind what is the most common weight loss on hCG and why, okay? The numbers I'm going to give you are just for women. So for men, they're different. They're a different animal. So they lose a lot of weight. They will lose more weight than us. They're bigger. They have more muscle mass. They have more testosterone. So just for many reasons, they're going to lose more. The numbers I'm giving you are for women. So if I had to give you only one number, which I don't really like to do, just because we are all unique and there's quite a few factors that affect what's going to be a normal amount of weight loss for us. But if I did have to give you one number, I would say that 0.5 pound per day is the average weight loss on hCG. And what that means is that in about 40 days, you'll lose around 20 pounds. But let's get a little deeper into this after I get some water. Okay. So if you have 50 or more pounds to lose, that's just a general number, but if you have more weight to lose, your average will likely be higher. So you actually may be losing more, like 3/4 of a pound per day average, or even maybe up to a pound. So, if you're 100 pounds overweight, you may lose 40 pounds in 40 days. So that's kind of more, it's going to be a higher average when you have more than 50 pounds or so to lose. If you have less than 50 pounds or, less than 50, 40 pounds to lose, your average will be more around that 0.5 pound mark in general. That's going to be more what's to be expected. So the 20 pounds in 40 days type thing, okay? If you have less than like 30 or 20 pounds to lose, at that point, the average actually is going to go down. So it's going to be more like 0.3 pounds per day at that point. My final rounds were like that. So my final round 7 years ago, I lost about 17 pounds in about 43, 45 days. And my average was about 0.3 or something like that per day. And by that point, I was very tiny. So it really did make sense. I was like a size 2. And it really does make sense because there's less of you to begin with. So as you get smaller, we'll talk about that in a minute, but as you get smaller, there's less of you to work with. So your weight loss will be slower. So let's talk about why this is normal weight loss. Why are these averages normal? Why don't we all just lose a pound per day all the time forever? Why? Well, it has to do with what our average metabolism is as a woman and how many calories a woman typically burns in a day. Now, these are just some general ranges that I'm going to give you. This is from an article in SF Gate Healthy Eating. It's about sedentary women. So just keep in mind being active obviously would change these numbers. But they showed that they do this by age brackets. So they showed that women ages 19 to 30 tend to burn between 1,800 and 2,000 calories a day. Women in the 31 to 50 year age bracket burn around 1,800 calories a day. And women older than 50 burn around 1,600 calories per day, okay? So what we're gonna do now, and just keep in mind, those numbers would be affected by a lot of things. It would be affected not only by age, but your activity level, how much muscle mass you have, if you have a hypothyroid condition, just lots of things like that. So those are just some general numbers. But based on that, let's do an example realistic weight loss on a 500 calorie hCG diet day, okay? So this is just theoretical. Let's take the middle road for the women in the 31 to 50 age bracket. They said that around 1,800 calories per day might be burned by a woman in that age group that's sedentary. So let's do the math on that. You burn 1,800 calories that day, this day on the diet. You ate 500 calories. So you consumed 500, so we have to deduct that because we're trying to find out what our calorie deficit is, right? Because we're trying to find out how much weight am I going to lose. So in a day, or in a few days. So we burned 1,800 calories, but we ate 500. So that means that our deficit for the day is actually 1,300 calories, right? So we subtracted the 500 we ate, so now we have a 1,300 calorie deficit. So how many days is it going to take to lose 1 pound of fat if we're burning off 1,300 calories a day? The math is, I already did it, is 2.7 days. So basically 3 days. It's going to take 3 days to lose a pound on the scale of actual fat. And so if you were losing 0.3 on the scale for 3 days, that would be just about right. You see that? So I hope that helps kind of make some sense of this kind of just the science behind like what your body can actually do and what isn't realistic, because now that we're looking at that, now the idea of losing 1 pound of fat per day doesn't make as much sense. In fact, if you were going to do that, let me give you the math on that really quick. You'd have to burn 4,000 calories per day, technically, because there's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat, plus you're eating 500. So you got to add that all up, and that's 4,000 calories. You'd have to burn that every day to lose a pound of fat a day on the diet. So that's just not going to happen in general, right? So for women anyhow. So hopefully that makes sense. The other thing is as you get smaller, in general, unless you're doing serious weightlifting or something to kind of compensate, smaller people do have lower metabolisms than larger people. And it's not because, they're less healthy. It's just because they're simply smaller people now. And when you're larger, you might not think that you have a higher metabolism as a larger person because, when we get overweight, we feel like, oh, I'm unhealthy and blah, blah, blah. But it actually does take more calories to maintain your higher body weight. So you do have a higher metabolism in general. And then as you become smaller, it doesn't take as many calories to maintain a smaller body size. So that is kind of one of the normal processes that can happen. And you can kind of reverse that a little. You can build your metabolism through weightlifting and all, but that is kind of just a normal process, and it's not unhealthy. It's just what it is. And so for that reason, that's why, if you're 140 pounds, it might take you quite a while to lose 10 pounds. But if you're 200 pounds, you might lose 10 pounds very quickly within 3 or 4 days, especially if you consider water weight, which we're going to get to in a second. So anyway, I hope that kind of helps put things into perspective a little bit, just to show what normal weight loss is on the diet. I made a little graph. Do you guys, how on certain diets they'll talk about Weight Watchers or something like, oh, your first goal is to lose 10% of your body weight or something like that. Well, a percentage of your body weight in actual pounds will be different depending on what weight you are, right? So I wanted to just show you this little graph, this little thing I made. So say you started hCG at 200 pounds and you lost 30 pounds during your round in 6 weeks. If you did that, that would mean you had lost 15% of your body weight. So, but what happens is a lot of us feel like we end up expecting to continue losing the same amount of weight even when we become smaller, but I want to show you why this doesn't make sense. So that was 15% of your body weight when you lost 30 pounds when you started at 200. But say you're starting at 155 pounds now, and you expect to lose 30 pounds again. Well, if you did, that would actually be 19.4% of your body fat now, not 15. So now you're saying you expect to lose a higher percentage of your body weight on your next round. In your head, you're thinking, I just expect to lose the same because you're thinking 30 pounds. But in reality, that's not because you're starting from a lower number. Does that make sense? So then my last example is, say you were starting now hCG at 130 pounds and you expect to lose 30 pounds like you did when you were heavier or like all your friends who are heavier have. But if you did that, that would mean you actually lost 23% of your body fat in 6 weeks. Is that going to happen? I don't think so. So that's not realistic. So just to kind of show you how percentages make a difference, it all has to do with where you're starting from. So I hope that helps, give some perspective there. So the thing is, for the most part, if you do the averages on your weight loss when you're concerned, most of the time you'll find that your weight loss is actually in line with normal weight loss given your circumstances. And if you see that to be the case, don't worry about it past that. Like, just figure out your average and then know that, like, oh, my results are normal. Great, I'm doing good. Like, don't worry about it, you know? Try not to have that specific number in your head of like how much you're going to lose in how many days. We just can't dictate that to our body. And so just kind of keep in your head, like, I'm going to lose weight this round. And that's awesome. I'm excited to see where I end up. And it's helping me get to my bigger goal, which is whatever, the 75 pounds or the 50 pounds or whatever. Okay? Okay, so the two things we're going to talk about next are details that can change total weight loss, and then what's important to monitor for best weight loss. So details that change total weight loss. The averages that I mentioned to you a moment ago, they can end up being skewed a little bit by water weight. So I think most of us are familiar with this, that when we lose weight at the beginning of a diet, especially, that usually we like lose several pounds, like, you know, within a few days. And that's because there's a lot of water, right? We know that that's not fat. And so that's just a normal part of the process, but that kind of skews the averages sometimes. But the other thing to keep in mind is that some individuals carry a lot more water weight than others. So I have a very good friend, and she told me that if she has a food she's allergic to, she can gain like 10 or 12 pounds like overnight. That means she's a person who retains water very easily and in large amounts. That's, for some reason, that's just what her body does. Now, I have never had that experience. I've only gained, I think, 2 or 3 pounds overnight before. I've never gained more than 3 pounds overnight. So that's important to keep in mind, especially if you're comparing yourself to other people, because someone who's losing 40 pounds in 40 days, maybe you're like, well, but they aren't really super overweight. Maybe there's someone who also carries a lot of water weight, and so a lot of that is water. So just keep that in mind too. Our bodies aren't all exactly the same, and so that's why it's not always a good idea to compare ourselves with others. You want to keep more in mind what's kind of a normal average of weight loss based on about what you're burning per day, what's your calorie deficit per day, and how long is it going to take to add up to actual fat loss. Does that make sense? So anyhow, that's just one example of that. The other example I wanted to give you really quick on that is sometimes even comparing with yourself. You know, say you do a round of hCG, and just prior to starting that round, you know, you'd been eating real junky food, highly processed, high sodium processed stuff. You might lose a lot more that round, especially those first couple weeks, because you have a lot of inflammation and water weight to lose. So say you get to the end of that round and then you eat clean phase 3, you're eating super healthy, you've been already eating clean on hCG, then you go into phase 3 and you're eating clean, you're not doing the junk food thing, and then you start your next round, but this time you don't seem to lose nearly as much in the first couple weeks as you did your last round. Is something wrong? Is the hCG not working? Is your body not responding to it? Like, what's going on? Well, keep in mind that before, your body was in a different state. It was full of water and inflammation. You're not in that state now. You've been eating healthy, so you're not retaining water. You don't have inflammation to lose. That's a good thing. You're just losing fat now. But as a result, you're not going to see big inflated numbers on the scale either. But I think if you think about the logistics of it, that's actually good, right? You're in a healthier state and you're just losing fat. And that's why it's so important to not get too hung up on the numbers. So I hope that makes sense. Alrighty, we are on to our last section of this chat. 1 second. All right, we're going to talk about what's important to monitor for best weight loss. So, AKA things that really can cause trouble for your weight loss. So sometimes you do need to troubleshoot. You know, if you've only lost 3 pounds in 2 weeks, something is amiss at that point. You know, so there are times when it's not not quite right. So here's 7 things that can affect your weight loss, and then we'll just break them down really briefly, like super briefly. So 1, stress. 2, some birth controls. 3, sleep. 4, exercising. 5, food intolerance. 6, salt and water retention. And 7, water intake. Okay, so let's break these down real quick. So 1, stress. Stress raises cortisol levels, and cortisol really can prevent weight loss and actually promotes fat storage, especially around your middle. The tough thing about stress is that a lot of times it happens in our life and our boss is mean or crazy things happen and we can't control it. And so that's tough because I'm having some stress in my life right now too. So, and I haven't been able to sleep and very well, and I'm stressed. So anyhow, but anyway, at least having that in mind, this is a couple things. So 1 is that if you know you're having a super stressful time in your life, that may not be a good time to do the hCG diet. Like, don't start it if you haven't. Try to do it at a time that's not super stressful. And then the other thing is, if you don't have a choice or you're already in it, try some stress relieving stuff. Like, definitely take a walk and calm down and breathe and read a book or something, or just try to do something to help yourself calm down, because it really does affect things. Number 2 is some birth controls. I'm not going to go into details on it really. I don't know a lot, but I think certain things like the Depo-Provera shot and just some other ones like that can interfere. So just be aware of that. 3, sleep. This one is super important. You must get sleep on the diet. And I understand that sometimes we start dealing with insomnia on the diet because on this diet, it does actually tend to raise like our adrenaline levels and stuff. And so that can cause us to deal with insomnia. So that can be tough. I want to show you something that I've taken in the past that really helps me with anytime I have trouble with sleep that's caused by high cortisol levels. It's called phosphatidylserine. You guys see that? You can take a screenshot if you want. There you go. Because it's a weird spelling. So phosphatidylserine is just a natural supplement, but what it does is it actually helps regulate and balance your cortisol levels. So both stress and if you're not sleeping enough, you will get high cortisol levels at the wrong time. So what you're like in a normal healthy person, your cortisol levels will be highest in the morning when you wake up. You wake up, your cortisol levels should be high because it's supposed to help power you through your day and help you get stuff done and be super awake. And then as the day wears on, you're supposed to have your cortisol levels by the time you go to bed be nice and low so you can go to sleep, be relaxed. But when you're stressed and or not sleeping well, that pattern gets totally skewed. Sometimes it flips completely and you can end up with high cortisol at night where you either can't fall asleep and or you wake up in the morning at like 2 or 3 a.m. and can't go back to sleep till 5 or 6. That's been happening to me lately. I actually just took some of this last night because I forgot about this. And it's been like this for like 2 weeks. And then I just remembered this and I was like, oh, I should try it. And it did. I didn't wake up in the middle of the night last night. So this helps to basically balance that and help it go back to the normal levels it should be at the proper times. So that can help with that. So anyway, the 2 reasons sleeping is so important for weight loss and for fat loss is one, again, because of the cortisol level issue. And the second, I just want to share this. There was a small study done. There was 2 groups of people, and they were on the same calorie diet. So they were on a diet for weight loss, same calories, but one group was sleep deprived. They only got to sleep 5.5 hours a night, and the other group slept 8.5 hours per night, and they monitored them. And they checked how much weight they lost, but also how much fat and muscle of that weight was lost. What they found was they actually did lose the same amount of weight on the scale. This was only like a 2-week test. However, the very, very interesting thing about this was the sleep-deprived group, they lost 55% less fat than the group that slept 8.5 hours per night. So what this means is the group that only slept 5.5 hours a night, a lot more of their weight loss was not fat and it was muscle instead. So yeah, really crummy results. So that's just one small example to show how much even if you were still losing weight but not sleeping, you may not be losing nearly as much fat as you could be. You could be losing muscle, and that's just bleh. So anyhow, I thought that was interesting. Okay, point 4, things as far as monitoring that do make a difference for weight loss on hCG is exercising. So if you're exercising while remaining on calories that are too low on hCG, your body can kind of rebel and lock up. And so you either need to increase your calories while you're still exercising on hCG or remove the exercise, one of the two, so that you can make sure your body keeps responding. Number 5 is if you have a food intolerance. So there might be a food causing inflammation that's kind of like causing a stall. And so just try removing a food that you've been having. Like, you might not know which food it is, but if there's a food you've been having frequently, or maybe you were losing weight fine, you ate a new food and then didn't lose weight, that, like say it was cabbage or tomatoes or beef or something, you can just try removing again for 4 or 5 days and see how you do. Number 6 is salt and water retention. This is actually not really something to be concerned with, in my opinion, but we do need to mention it because it does affect how things appear on the scale. So small amounts of salt actually cause a lot of water retention. And again, it's not, I'm actually kind of one of those believers in salt. Salt's actually really important for adrenal health, things like that. I'm not like a low salt person. But yeah, so if you say you have a big soup and there's a lot of liquid in there, right? And for it to have the taste you want, you typically are going to add more salt to it because of the volume involved. And so then this actually happened to me on hCG. And the next morning, you're up 2 pounds on the scale. So that happened to me. It's just salt and water, guys. That's all it is. Like, you don't need to sweat it. But do know that that's what it is. Like, you don't want to gain 2 pounds on the scale and be totally clueless as to, like, what happened, right? Because that's scary. So just kind of consider, like, oh, yeah, I'm having saltier food. My approach for it was, you might feel like, oh, I'm going to eat low salt so I don't have to deal with that. You could do that, but I think the way I felt like I wanted to approach it was just basically get a baseline level of sodium that's kind of my comfort level of how I like to eat my food. And once I have that in my system, and whatever weight that is for me, that's my baseline. And then I'm not going to gain any more, and then I'll keep losing weight on the diet, and it should be all good. So that's kind of how I handled it. But anyway, just being aware of that. And then the last point is water intake. Water does seem to have a real impact on weight loss. The recommendation is 2 liters or half a gallon of water per day. You can actually overdo it. Like, you don't want to dilute your electrolytes and stuff. So it's like, if you're chugging gallons, be careful. You can actually mess up your electrolyte levels, and that can actually make you feel really sick on the diet. So we don't need to overdo it, but you do need to definitely have some water. So anyway, that's kind of the main gist of my chat today. So final thoughts. My biggest advice, again, if you are worried about your weight loss and how things are going, run the actual numbers. So figure out your average weight loss so far. So again, if it's day 20 and you've lost, 13 pounds so far, you need to figure out you've been dieting for 19 days total. So you want to divide the 13 pounds by the 19 days of dieting. And whatever that number is, if it's like 0.6 or 0.7 pounds per day, you'll know that, like, oh, I'm actually doing okay. I was getting nervous because I had a 0.2 day and whatever, and you'll realize, okay, I'm freaking out over nothing. Just calm down, So anyhow, that's pretty much it. And then, if something does seem super off, like, you're really losing, like, you're 50 pounds overweight and your average is like 0.2, something may be off. And that's when you want to kind of consider those 7 things that I mentioned above and see if there's anything you can try modifying. I'm going to do some questions or answer some questions in just a couple minutes. But just one last reminder that this is the special launch week of the hCG Chica recipes, which are hCG diet. I can't say hCG anymore. My mouth is just... I'm done saying that word tonight. But they're recipes for phase 2, the weight loss phase. So basically until Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, if you get them before then, at hcgchicarecipes.com. You will also automatically get a special bonus that I'm including, which is some phase 2 meal plans that I made. So the recipe site has 441 recipes, but it's just recipes. There's no meal plans or anything. But I made a bonus just for the next day or two, again, this launch week, and it'll have some meal plans for you guys. So you can check that out. All right, I am done. So if you have any questions, I can take a few minutes here to answer your questions for 5 minutes or something. So I'm gonna take a sip of water, and I'll read a few comments, and if you have a question, just type it on in. So I'm looking in the comments here, and Jennifer, I don't know if you're still there, but you said you had gained your weight back and that you didn't do the maintenance program and that you're disappointed. And I understand, and the maintenance part, that's the part that we haven't had a lot of info on in the past. I don't know if you know about my P3 to Life program. That's at p3tolife.com, but it is a structured program for maintenance, and it really does work. And that is what we need. We need to know what to do after the diet that's more specific than just eat low carb. That's just not enough direction, and that's, I think, why we've had a lot of trouble. But when we have more guidance, you can reliably be successful with maintaining your weight loss. Lori says, I just finished 6 weeks of maintenance and I maintained great. I'm on day 6 of another round now. That's awesome, Lori. Good for you. That's great. And Angel, oh, that's cool. She's talking about dose. You got your dose right this week. You went down to 110 IUs, and it's perfect. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, you guys, hCG dosage is one of those things that you have to dial in and get the right dose so that you can have the least hunger, and it's going to be unique to everyone. For anyone else who wants to know about hunger and hCG and dosage, I have a post on that. It's hcgchica.com/dosage. So you can do that. Okay, I'm not actually seeing any other questions here, so I'm going to give you one last chance, and then I'm going to go eat dinner. Anything else? Last chance. Let me show you guys one more time the thing for sleep if you have trouble, phosphatidylserine. I don't make anything on this or anything. Just go look for it on Amazon. I'm just saying it does work for that, and I know how frustrating it is when some of these factors, like not being able to sleep, you can't control it. It's well, I know I need to sleep, but I can't sleep. So what do you want me to do? So that can really help. I'm glad you liked the information, Sue. You are welcome. I had a great time talking with you guys, and it's really been fun doing a live again. It's been a long time since, I did one last week, but before that, it had been a long time. All right, you guys. Well, you guys have a really good evening, and I will talk to you later, okay? Bye-bye.